As you can see, are going to be the prop it up assignment, and then we'll do the putting it all together as well. All right, so I've got the prop it up assignment up here, and let's look at what we need to do. We need to create a component called person card that accepts the following props, and then we need to display 4 person card components that show 4 different people using props. All right. So the first thing that I'm going to do here is I'm just going to create a brand new project. So I don't have this assignment yet. I'm going to start again with Create React App. I'll go to my terminal. And inside here, the command we want to run is npx create react app. We'll call it prop it up. Okay, and that might take some time. Is that a movie or something? Prop it up? Like one of those dance competition movies or something, you know what I mean?
Pump it up.
Yeah, pump it up. Ah. Okay, maybe that's what I was
One of my
thinking.
favorites.
A true classic, right? Yeah. All right, great. So now that I've got this done, or almost done, once this is finished, I'm just going to open up my VS Code so that I can start working on it once it's finished. Happy hacking. All right, cool. So code prop it up. Whoops. Okay, I've got my new window open here. Let me make sure this is big enough. All right, so let's kind of back up and just start from the bare basics of what's going on here. When I first run this project, what file is going to be opened up in my browser when I go to localhost 3000? Before that even. I think you had that reversed, right? So the very first thing that the browser is going to get the index.html file, right? Okay. So let's look and kind of see what that looks like. If we go inside of our public directory, you'll see we've got this file index.html. And I'm looking down here. There are a number of things in here, and down below I've got this thing, a div with an ID of root. But I'm looking in here and thinking to myself, do I see any JavaScript being loaded here? Do you guys see any JavaScript being loaded? No, right? Well, that's kind of perplexing, because what we were talking about before is that JavaScript's doing all the work here, right? So if I'm just getting this index.html that's completely empty, how's that going to do anything? Here's the thing. By the time our browser opens this up, when we're running the project, underneath the hood, Create React App is taking this index.html template, and it's actually injecting our script tags inside of it before it gives it back to our browser. Okay? So it might look like our script is not being loaded in there, but we'll see when I actually load it up in the browser that there is in fact a script tag there. Otherwise, React couldn't do anything, right? Because we would have no JavaScript being loaded. So let me open up my integrated terminal here, and let's run this project. So we'll say npm run start. Something's already running on port 3000. Okay, that's probably the other project we were working on earlier. So we'll do it on 3001. And I'm going to open up, just inspect here so that we can see what's going on. Oops. Inspect. If we look at our index, or I'm sorry, just the HTML here, what's happening? That's what we were looking for, right? There actually is some JavaScript being injected into this page. Otherwise, without that, we wouldn't be able to have React doing its thing. Okay? All right. So, with that being said, let's go back to our folder structure and kind of see what the path of information is here. If we go into our source directory, we've got this file called index.js. And this is primarily where everything starts. This is where everything gets happening from the beginning, right? So inside this file, we're importing React. We're also importing React DOM. And then what's this app that we're importing here? Do you guys know what that is? What is it? It sounds like that's our application, right? It's actually just a component. Yeah, exactly. Now it has the name app, but it could be called something else. Like I could go in there and rename that component something else if I didn't want it to be called app. If I felt like the name app was a little bit, I don't know, confusing, I could easily change that to something else. Okay? And then if we keep going here, we're importing a service worker here, which we're not even using at all, so I don't want you guys to worry about that. What's happening down here on line 7? Okay, so this render function, what this is doing is it's taking this component right here, this app component, and it's mounting it to a particular place in our DOM on the page. Okay, so we picked this spot. We want to go grab this element by ID that has an ID of root, and that's where we want to put our component. Okay, so basically what this is doing is I want you guys to think of this as we are mounting our application to this point on the page. Okay? And I could change that too. If I wanted to change the ID to app, I could do that. If I changed it in here, where else do I need to change it? In that index.html file, right? Yep.
So what exactly is the first argument you can
The first argument is an actual React component.
Right, but it's a so it's you refer to some object that inherits a component class. But it's just that the syntax of that is weird because it's
Well, in this case, it's not actually inheriting from the component class. It is a functional component, right?
okay.
So if we look into that app file here, we can see here it is actually just a function. It's a function that returns out some JSX for us.
Right. And that's why it's being wrapped by I guess those brackets. Last time
Yeah, so those brackets are indicating that we are just rendering out a React component. That's all.
okay.
That's all it is. So it is a functional component, as you guys can see here. All right. Cool. So now within this app component, as you guys can see, since that's the one thing that we're rendering here, it essentially is the main wrapper for our application. That's going to hold everything else that we've got inside of it. Okay? Now we're not going to have a whole ton of things in it because this assignment doesn't require that we create lots and lots of components. But it's going to have what's called our component tree. And what the component tree is it's basically all the components that are inside this thing right here. So we might have some other components that are inside that. That's the tree, is all that is. Okay? What does that kind of remind you of, a component tree? Yeah, I mean, we could still have a React app that had no routing whatsoever in it. So it doesn't necessarily have any routing. It can, and ours will, but it doesn't have to. So, but what I was thinking that it reminds me of is the actual DOM itself, right? You know how we have the document, and then underneath that we have a head element, and then we've got a body element, and then inside that body element, that has some children as well. It might have some divs. Each div might have some children, that kind of thing. You see how that's sort of like a tree-ish structure? Each thing has some children. So it's the same kind of thing. That's sort of like what our component tree is. All right. Any other questions about sort of what's going on here at the bottom level before we kind of get into the assignment itself? What is it? So the service worker is actually some other code that we can use to run code off of the main thread. But you're not gonna need to worry about that for this. Yeah. So in fact, we could simply comment this out, and I don't think that would cause us any issues. Yeah, no errors at all. So just make sure if you commented out up here on line 5 that you also comment out this down here, because otherwise it's going to try to unregister your service worker, which is undefined, right? That's going to be a problem.
Can you switch to the app.js file?
Mm-hmm.
So in here, this is a functional component, right?
Yes.
This is like a function inside. So we can also do the class component.
Yes, you
right
can.
here inside.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Also, at the index JavaScript file, the React DOM render, does that always add to the HTML element that you're pointing to?
You're asking, is that doing append child or something like that, right?
Well, yeah.
Is it appending our application as a child?
Yeah.
No, it's not. It's actually replacing all of the contents of that root div.
So that means you can't have multiple renders targeting the same HTML element.
Well, yeah, whichever one happens last will overwrite, what came before it.
So okay, that's what you're saying.
Yeah.
So which means if we have some content inside the index.html under the root div, and once we run this the app, so it will be replaced by the new content within the app component, right?
Yeah, you mean if you rendered right underneath here to that same div?
Right.
Yeah, so whatever this had rendered would be replaced, right?
So let's say we have some
So in other words, you wouldn't want to do that.
Okay.
Yeah, don't do that. Generally, you're only going to render one thing. I mean, there aren't that many cases where you'd want to render more than one root element, so to speak.
But it would just replace anything within the.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So as you said, when we run the React app first, the index HTML goes to the browser. After that, the JavaScript.
So the index.html that we were looking at there has undergone some slight modification, right? It now has those script tags injected into it. We're not seeing those when we open up our index.html here in VS Code, right? You don't see any of those script tags, but when we looked at it in the browser, we could see them down here. Okay? You can see there's like this bundle file, this chunk file, and a hot update. What do you guys think that hot update does? So that's the logic that's going to allow us to have our page refresh in front of our eyes. Exactly.
Can you go to the app render?
Mm-hmm. So line.
The app render.
So since this is a functional component, there actually is no render method. We're just simply returning some JSON. Yeah.
Is that what this could make a difference if your index is referring to class or function component? If it's a class component, you don't have to instantiate it.
No, actually, inside index.js, let's say that was a class-based component.
Right.
Still be the exact same thing. It'd still be those angle brackets like that. Good question.
But the difference is, so I guess you can rewrite the code in the app.js file
Mhm.
from the functional component to the class component.
Yeah, you
but
can.
you still may need to like number. Reference
Yeah, and
to
you
the
can
app.
you can even change the name too. We would just want to change it inside here as well. Yeah. Yeah. So it's totally flexible. You guys can decide to use class components wherever you want or functional components wherever you want. Generally, we're going to be emphasizing more functional components because that's where things are heading with React. Because functional components now have extra powers that they didn't used to have as far as like holding their own state now. Okay? All right. Everyone feel pretty good about this before we get into the assignment?
seems more of a tangent. So I'm not sure like how you wanna if you wanna do that route. But I guess I'm just trying to figure out like how to model this flow, I guess. So like you have your HTML.
Yeah.
So right now we're working with a simple base case of a single HTML page.
Yeah.
In which it makes a request to your server, and we're not just giving them an HTML page inside the file we're storing.
So create React app is sort of modifying that index.html.
Right, based on the given request.
Yeah, injecting those scripts for us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I guess like that entire project configuration I wasn't like too familiar with.
Yeah.
But so let's assume there's magic that happens, and then now it's doing this thing, right? So it goes from HTML to index.javascript, in which now it's going to read from the top down,
Yes.
and it's from this structure, it's more synchronous.
Right.
And then this will this will just modify whatever HTML document.
Whichever mounting element we've decided to use for our application.
Okay.
We just want to mount it here to this div.
Right. So it's like
That's where it goes.
Right, so your HTML, JavaScript, and HTML is broken down to the divs, and then you usually want to try to create a component that gets called or assigned to a given div or rendered to it, and then you can have your nested components, whether if it's functions or class, which can also be nested with other functions and class.
Yeah, I should mention too that you could actually create some nesting right inside here if you wanted to. I could have like an app component that was nesting some other stuff right here in this index.js, and that would work.
Okay.
I could sort of create a shallow little tree right here. Still be fine.
That makes sense.
Can you have multiple React now members for different divs inside the HTML, or would it be better just to have
Quite unlikely that you would ever see that.
Gotcha.
I mean, so it really is just like a framework of document management.
Yeah, I mean it's just a way for us to interactively manage whatever the user's seeing on the page.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so that's why like you try to like maintain like a one-to-one relationship ideally, or sectioned off depending on how you want to structure HTML.
Right.
If you want like multiple JavaScripts, I'm not sure if you have multiple index.js files on it, or like if you want to route them to a different HTML later down the line, so you can separate from that.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, I'm trying
I
to
mean,
understand
yeah,
the structure,
things
so
could
that
get more
expands.
complex depending on what you're doing, but
Yeah.
let's just kind of try to think about it from a more simple standpoint, which
Right.
is like we've got one application, we're mounting it to one point, just so that way like people aren't getting confused.
Yeah.
We'll keep it really kind of bare bones in that respect.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because I guess also just thinking about like how we've transitioned from more like an object representation of what we're trying to deliver versus this entire component perspective. And it's just because we're really just interacting with the document. The document is just this aggregation of functions and components within it. Which are like components ideally is what the aggregation of HTML elements you want to represent something in the UI, whether it's a table, form, or whatever it is.
Right. All right. Okay.
Okay.
All right, so I think we're pretty much ready to dive into this assignment, right? Let's go ahead and create our person card component because we know that we're going to need that. So I don't have a components folder yet. Let's create one. Okay, and then inside there, let's create this person card component. Okay, I always need to import React when I'm going to render some JSX, right? Okay. And then I'm going to create this function. So we'll say person card. And it's going to take in props, right? All right. Now, before I even get to the inside of that function, I should probably make sure that I'm exporting it, just so that when I import it, I don't have any unexpected surprises. So we'll say export default person card. Okay. No, you can get away with not having that. I could put it in there if you like. I know. Sometimes I go back and forth about being a stickler for semicolons and not. So inside this function, what we're being told for the assignment, let me go back to the actual, here it is that we simply want to show some different things, right? We want to show a name, an age, and a hair color. So let's do that. I'll just come down here and let's return out some JSX. I'll put this inside of a div. And then our name, probably we can put that inside of an h2 tag or something of the sort. And I think it was last name first and then comma first name, right? Cool. So let's do, oh man, stop doing that.
Yeah, that's super annoying.
My PC don't do that.
Linux does
Just
it
my luck. Oh, Linux does it
too.
too?
Yeah, Linux does it too.
Alright. Okay, first name. Okay, does this make sense to you guys how I'm using those curly braces in there? And why am I doing that again?
The JavaScript expression.
Yeah, because these are JavaScript expressions, right? Okay. All right, and then underneath that, we're going to have a p tag that has the age. And then in the age, I'm just going to say props.age, same thing. Come down here with one other p tag, and that is the hair color, props, hair color. All right. So we're all pretty much set to go. I do see one little area of improvement that I can probably fix. Remember our destructuring from yesterday? You see how I keep saying props dot, props dot, props dot, props dot? What if I don't want to do that? Where would I destructure it? Yeah, I have a couple options. I could do it right here if I wanted. I could just say const first name, last name, hair or age, hair color, and then I would set that equal to the props object, right? Now I can just get rid of all these guys like that. That looks a little bit cleaner, right? I like that. Now, if I wanted to shorten it even more, I could take this destructuring here and put it right inside here and replace that props object. So let's just grab this here and put that inside there. Now I don't need this. Now that doesn't look super readable right there, so probably what I would do is just make it so that these are on different lines. I don't know. That's pretty readable, right? We can see that we're destructuring these specific properties from our props. Yeah? All right. Cool. So that looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy with this component right now. So, question, Andrew?
Try to. So you're. Is that an empty object you're putting to? For the function.
Oh, no. This is the actual function body.
Like they're pointing that into that function.
You're talking about this arrow right here. Right? Yeah, so this is not an empty object. It's actually pointing to the function body.
Oh, okay.
But the destructuring is happening right inside here. Okay. Yeah, Vincent.
Really quick, the whole component, so like in the platform, I believe it told us to like import React and then component from React as well. And then it says make like a class of whatever, and then extends from this React component. So we don't really
Yeah,
need-
so that would be if we were making a class-based component. And I think at that point in the platform, you probably were.
yeah.
So you're not wrong about that. I'm just showing you guys it as a functional component.
So functional components you said are better, right? Or not better, but
They're a little bit leaner
Okay.
and a little bit less verbose. Yeah. And you could see, like, this doesn't really require a whole lot of code, right? It's just us pretty much saying we want this thing to look like that, and that's it. Pretty simple. All right, cool. So how would we use this at this point? So if I go inside my app.js, I don't currently have access to this component yet, right? So I do need to import it. So let's just go over here, import person card from components / person card. Okay, so yeah, Manny's my semicolon manager. He's gonna be managing my semicolons. Thank you. So here inside our div, let's try to actually render out a person card. All right. So I'll put person card. And I'm going to split these props up on separate lines to make it a little bit more readable for us. All right. So I want first name to be 1, last name, whoops. Is it Shen?
Yep. With P.
Shang. Right, got it. Okay, and then we'll say your age is 20. He's 18. Man, you're young.
Yeah, 20 is good.
All right, all
I'm like
right.
20 now.
All right, fair enough. Your hair color, black. Okay. All right, that looks pretty good. So let's come into here and see what we got. There he is, right? Looking good. All right. And then if I want to duplicate this down, because I want to create some other people as well, let's come down here. Let's create Michael. Oops. Chen. You've got black hair as well, right? Okay.
What if the last name is the first and after the first name? How do you manage it?
Oh, how did we manage that? So all we did is we just changed the order inside this person card. You see, we do last name, comma, first name. Yeah. All right. So we can create another one, obviously. I'm not going to do all 4 because we don't really need to do that. All right, let's have Nick in there. Ariagata, right? All right. You're looking like you're pushing about 30. Right? All right. Good. All right, there you go. Rocket with pride. I like it. And there we go. We got 3 people represented. Cool. So this is just a basic component that's not actually dealing with any kind of state, right? Where did it get all of its data from?
From the parent component
Which was
app,
app.js, right? We directly passed it down from within our app.js component.
So it's also about that, right? In the app JS file.
Yeah.
So why, or does it even matter that you're creating, or you're doing it as a function app versus like a arrow function?
No, we can change that too. That does. I mean, that's really up to your own preference, how you like to see it. So I could say const app like that, right? And really, if I wanted to be super terse with this, I could even get rid of this curly brace that was opening it here, and I could use the implied return. So I could just take this up here. Whoops. Get rid of that. Yeah, and then and then you just need to make sure that you remove the bottom curly brace, and then I could bring the indentation back a little bit, like that. So that would work just the same. Yeah. Yeah. So just a syntactical thing. Syntactic sugar. All right. Now, let's make sure that everyone feels really good about this before we get into the birthday clicker thing. All right, because there's this in the putting it all together assignment. There's a birthday clicker where we can actually age each person by. So I want to make sure everyone's oh my gosh, just like that, right? We have a lot of power. All right, let's have thumbs on this.
Also, like so when you're
Okay.
it's also like when you're creating a person card, so you have to because it's JSX, you have to individually let's say, yeah, it kind of makes sense. You don't have to wrap that in an object because it's JSX, right? But I thought like inside. Can you go to the person card thing for a second again?
Okay.
So let's see like what that takes in. Yeah, because that takes in a single props, right?
So it takes in a props object, and we
Right.
decided we just wanted to destructure out these specific keys from it.
But that's why the JSX context in its syntax, like it's not like it's wrapped under an object. Also, it's just an attribute of the JSX element you're creating. You're invoking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So every element is going to have this props object,
Right.
and then we could do what we want with it.
Okay. It's
Can you do the class component as well, so we can compare side by side what's the difference between component,
Okay.
class component and functional component, and
Certainly.
just to clarify the syntax.
Yeah. Okay. So let's do that. So let's up here. I'll say class person card class, just so that we don't run into any problems, right? And we'll say extends React dot component. Okay, and then we would need to have this render function inside there, right? So we would say render, and then our render function would basically return out this same thing right here. Okay. The only problem is, do I have reference to last name, first name, age, and hair color?
No.
No. So what would I need to do?
They start to point into the prop.
So yeah, if I wanted to access them, it would be something like this dot props dot last name, right?
Yeah.
Ugh, God, that's terrible. What if I did something like this? I could also destructure it up here. If inside this render function, I just wanted to say const, and then set that equal to this dot props. Because I know this dot props was that object that I was interested in, but I only wanted these specific things from it, right? So that should be all right.
also for the props we're using for the person card. So I'm guessing we can't use we shouldn't use the JSX reserved space for the HTML elements. Because the way I'm reading this, right, is you're creating a person card, and also my recollection was you can assign this also like the attributes that the HTML can use to render it out, whether it's class X.
Oh, I
value
see what you're
X,
saying, right.
And then so the way props gets passed to your person card is it takes all of the aggregated attributes when within that bracket, right, and then passes it off. So whether if it's
Correct.
something-
Yeah, that's a good way of thinking about it. It's sort of like
Right.
we're taking all of these attributes right here and we're bundling up them into an object.
right,
That's what that props object is.
right.
Yes.
But then also it's not just for the props; like it can actually be used like as part of the HTML, whether you use something like like class ID equals or class value equals this, you can assign it. Or it's or I'm not going too far with that. Like it's just a way to notate what's get passed over. It's not really indicative of property assignment, property assignment of the element we're creating here, which is your person project.
Right, because the actual elements or the true HTML elements are not
Right.
being created right here. They're being created inside the person card.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So that's why they're the ones who's creating it. So
Right.
it's like independent of them. So
Mhm.
I don't have to worry about some namespace collision.
Exactly. And that's where this whole like concept of component reuse comes in. It's like
Right.
I can just pass some information to this component, let the component worry about rendering, right?
Yeah,
It's just like here's some data.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, cool,
Okay.
cool.
Nice. All right.
One
Yeah.
quick question. So on the component side,
Mhm.
can we specify an element for this to appear in a specific area on our page? You know, because like how the app is looking for that div with the root ID. Can we
Right.
give it another, create another div within there that has a specific class, say, person card holder class, and then have it inject that in that.
There is something called a React portal, but it's really a more advanced edge case type feature, so I don't want you to be too concerned about that. But yeah, there is a way that you could kind of like render to a place outside of where you currently were in the tree. It is possible. Yes. All right. So we're pretty good with this. Let's move on to putting it all together and see how we can actually increment these ages. Okay, so coming over here, putting it together. And what we want to do with the same assignment here is we want to create a birthday button that will increase one person's age by 1. Okay? So first thing, let's just create this button. We don't need to worry about the functionality yet. So inside, I'm actually going to comment this out since we're not using this class-based one yet right now. Okay, so down here, let's just create this button. Increment age. Okay, and then if I go back to my page, hopefully that button is showing up. Yes, it is. Good. All right. Now, if I want to be changing something about this component's data, what am I going to have to import here or use? I'm going to have some state involved, right? Okay. So let's also import that from React, this useState hook. useState. Okay. Then what I want to do is I want to actually create some state based on whatever the age that I took in was. Okay. So we'll say something like const given, or let's just say current age, and then we'll have this function called set current age, and then I'm going to set that equal to useState, and then what am I going to pass into that?
Oh, you're of the child component? You state of that component?
Nope.
Age.
Whoop. I heard it. Right? So I'm going to pass in the actual age that this component was given to begin with. Make sense?
Yeah.
All right. Because that's our initial state. Okay. And then let's create an actual click handler so that we can respond to that button click. So we'll just say function handle click. And then what I want to do is I want to set current age to what?
The age, whatever the age is right now.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
But what's our stateful age? Like the age that we're determining we can actually change? Is it this one? Is it this the one that came in through the props?
No.
No, that one's unchangeable. We can't touch it.
So it's.
Oh, the set current.
It's like MC Hammer. Just had to say it. Sorry. All right. Let's leave that age alone. All right. Okay. So the one that is changeable is this one that we created when we invoked the useState hook, right? So let's use the current age, and
Also
then
about that, right? In terms of like just language, like what is it when people say use the word hook? Anyway, what does that exactly
use the word what? Hook? Ah, okay. So when we say hook in terms of React, it means that we're allowing a developer to hook into certain features. We're allowing them to hook into using state inside of a functional component. Okay? You know, it's like if they were a pirate and they're like, all right, here, give me that feature.
No, yeah,
I wanna
like, that
use
makes
that.
sense, but it's just like just hearing it, it was like, what does hook mean? It means to hook. And that's an
Hooking
explanation.
instead.
I get it, you know, because
Okay.
it's a very low-level word, but
Yeah,
it's just funny. That's all.
No, but the pirate metaphor actually made me.
that kind of worked.
Yeah.
Let me grab that feature. Give it
Yeah,
to me.
because
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Okay. Yeah, noted though. I agree with you. Like it's not very good to use the word in defining itself. That was my
Yeah,
bad.
it is, right? Because like the description is to the definition.
You're at the bottom
Right.
of the
Yeah.
component tree for that word.
Okay.
You can't get something that can use that word.
Very good. Good point. All right. So all we want to do is we want to increment this by 1, which means that I can pass in the current age plus 1, right? Okay. So let's do that. Plus 1. And then I want to make this button actually respond to this so that it'll do something with my state, right? So we'll say on click, and then we'll say handle click. Okay, and then let's test it out. So here, if I want to make Nick a little bit older, then nothing happens.
He's always 30.
He's always.
Yeah. There's one thing that I forgot to do. Did you guys notice what it was?
Oh, add functionality to the clip that it has.
No, the click has the functionality.
That's,
Where did I forget to update it?
See?
Inside the actual JSX, we're still using the prop age, right? We're not actually using current age.
Right.
All right, so let's fix that. So instead of age, just change this guy, age. Okay. Now if I want to update Nick, there we go. Michael's getting older really fast. Jesus, Michael, slow down.
seems like it.
Woo, the years are passing fast, aren't they? Yeah. So that was the key thing. Sometimes you guys might forget to actually update what you want to appear on the page, even though you've made some functionality changes, right? All right, I've held you guys for a while. Let's have thumbs on this and then. Oh, Andrew. What's the clarifications?
At 90% because it's practice.
That does. Perfect practice makes perfect, right?
Practice.
All right, how are you guys over here? Sideways? Nick likes it. All right, good. You good, Mom?
Yeah, I'm coding along, but I'm having some errors.
Okay.
So
We can take a look at that at the end, unless it's like something super simple. Is it?
yeah, I can't see this.
Okay. All right. Cool. All right. So clarifications. I know Stefan didn't feel great about this.
So if you use a
Is it-
state, if you use a class class component, you don't
Mhm.
have to. Do you have to import the state and stuff on the top as well? So
Yep.
No. No.
No,
So
you
if we're using a class component, we would create this dot state inside of our constructor.
Okay.
So if you guys kind of wanted to see what that would look like, I'll uncomment this for a second here. Here we would have our constructor, right? That's going to take in some props. Oops. And then if we're going to use some kind of state inside this component, we need to make sure that we invoke super against the props. Okay? And then what I would do is I would set up the state And I would say something like current age would be what? So in this case, it would actually be props.age because I haven't really done any destructuring up in there. Yeah. So we'll set that up, and then I would have to create my click handler down here, right? So I'd say handle click. That's going to be an arrow function because I don't want to goof around with binding this up in the constructor. That's a pain in the butt. And then what I would do is I would call that this.setState function. So we would say current age, and then I would set that equal to this.state.current age plus 1. Then same thing down here, we would again have this button, and then our onClick handler, instead of being handle click, it would have to be this.handle click. Something like that.
And then you got to change the age down there, right?
Correct, yeah, that thing I keep forgetting to do. So I would actually need to change both of these, right? Oh, that's not the one. And then I could undo this guy. Okay, current age. There we go. Yeah, so just in case anyone doesn't know how to do that, though, you can do Command D to select multiple instances of the same word or phrase or whatever. And then if you want to deselect one of those things you selected, you could hold the Alt key and then click on it to have it removed from whatever you're trying to change.
Is Command Alt in Windows?
Control, yeah.
In Windows.
Oh, Control.
So I guess when would you, I guess from a principal perspective, when would you want to use class-based components?
There are maybe some cases where you really would want the lifecycle hooks of a class-based component. We're not really going to come across those here, but they don't necessarily have all of the lifecycle methods available to use as hooks.
Got it. So there's like based on the type of
Based on like what that component needs to do, there might be a certain case in which you'd want to use a class component.
okay.
Pretty
It's like-
pretty rare though.
Right. So I guess yeah, because a class component has maybe access to whatever React methods.
It's got all those
It's not
life
the
cycle methods.
Yeah, and
available
it's not
to
with
it.
component.
Right.
That
Mhm.
makes sense.
It is Alt.
Okay.
Sorry.
It is all okay. Cool.
They go up a little bit to yeah, right here. So in the this state, this dot state,
Mhm.
I set up the current age as this dot props dot age. But it's actually working the same with not having this dot in the front. What does that mean?
Well, because here I have access to props, right, directly. I don't need to call it this.props because my constructor took it in. I'm inside my constructor function right now, so I have access to whatever argument was passed to it. Now, in the other methods, like for instance this render method, I'm no longer inside that constructor, so I don't have direct access to
okay.
props. It's this.props at this point. Yeah.
Pretty cool. Man.
Pretty cool.
I'm curious though. I guess down the line once we dig deeper into React, obviously there's like a package somewhere that handles syncing of this information with your backend. Because like a lot of like this objects or things we're creating is all very applicationistic specific.
Yeah.
Versus like going down the line when we're actually fetching these people and creating them.
Yeah.
I mean there has to be like something in there that actually syncs that on like a given action.
Yeah, I mean, there are tons and tons of React-specific packages out there. If you guys go on npmjs.com,
Oh, that's like the official page that has it.
well, this isn't specific for React. This is just for like any. Why is it .org?
This is like the
So this is where you could find any node packages. So if I looked up React data, for instance, I would expect to find all kinds of stuff, right? React through, declarative data mapping through React tree. That kind of sounds like what you're talking about. Yeah, and I haven't looked at this before, but oh, an effective way to communicate between components. Interesting. Okay. React window. Victory. Data visualization for React. So, I mean, there are just countless React packages that you can, you know, play around with and stuff. There's a lot of stuff out there. All right, guys. Well, I'm going to let you go. Thanks for sharing this time with me. All right.